All right, so I am here with the wonderful three of the wonderful family members responsible for the new movie Hellbender, which we're going to talk about. But I want to talk about a lot of stuff, especially considering that as we are beginning this, I assume I read somewhere in the New York Times, which is a fancy, fun thing to say, that your next movie was going to be a Depression era period piece. Is that what I've stumbled into the middle of here?
You you have
100%. You stumbled right into Bonnie and Clyde meets Frankenstein with a nice family kiss.
With a nice family dynamic. Lovely. Yeah, I am just so fascinated and psyched on your whole story. And I mean, and it overlaps with so many things that I'm personally interested in, which are, psychological horror, sort of isolationist stuff, supernatural, theology, music. These are all things that coalesce and convene in the work that you've all done together. And I know a little bit about your story, having read about building the place on the side of the mountain, and how all the family is involved in the directing, editing, shooting, acting. So if you could, without forcing you to tell me your literal life story, if you could kind of walk me through sort of the evolution from a creative standpoint, these last few movies being more specifically in the horror genre, but each of them having this, great use of environmental things, whether it's the mountains, whether it's Joshua Tree, where I'm actually going to be in a few days, all these different places where you've shot and traveling in an RV. If you could just kind of tell me a little bit about how that evolved and how that eventually landed in Hellbender being the sixth feature?
Now
Somewhere in there?
seven, right? Seven?
um Hellbender was the sixth.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, yeah.
Z, how about I start and then you take it away from the hatred?
Great.
Does that be cool? Yeah. So we were living in Los Angeles. Kind of make a long story short. Creatively, we were running into some not getting permission to do anything. So we decided to take the permission process in our own hands and try to make a movie. And one of the things that is money, but we had the desire to make films. And so since we didn't have a lot of money, nature became our biggest actress, our biggest production unit, and our best lighting unit.
Yeah, a lot of natural light in your movies, which is amazing.
Except for light bulbs that are maybe in a room or something like that, we only use natural light, and that came from because that's where we started. There was no way we were going to be able to do lighting, so we always just shot with what nature was giving that day. We learned a lot. We made a ton of mistakes too, but we really started to hone our process of what we liked, and without a doubt, nature is our best friend. Like, we just work hand in hand with it, and a lot of the time we're just trying to keep up with her because she delivers a sunny day today, so we can't shoot outside because we like flat light, but we can shoot inside this room today because the light bouncing off the floor is magnificent. And so you're always kind of trying to work with what she's delivering on each day. It's always super beautiful. And we were interested in dramas that dealt with real people. We come from real small towns, so we live around kind of tough, real people, and we like to celebrate them, no matter how hard life is. Like, even the most broken people are heroic in their way, and we've always tried to capture that. And that's what we really trying to do with our dramas. But then Zelda came. Toby was writing a script one winter, and Zelda and I were bored, and we were on our way to soccer practice, and her little mouth opened up and her brain said,
Yeah, I was bored, so I was like, hey, we should make a horror movie about me, a young girl. I was only like 12 or 13, that just kills a bunch of dudes. Wouldn't that be a really interesting little movie? So then we created this timepiece, like I don't, what year was it in? Like,
And your dad's like, is there something you need to tell me? Are we working something out here in this
Well,
movie?
his
let's work it
reaction.
out on film, kid. Let's work it out on film.
Yeah, exactly.
No, yeah, he probably should have responded like, "Is everything okay?" But he responded, "Hell yeah, let's do this. Let's make it a timepiece too. I want to be in it." So yeah, we made our first horror movie. It was only around like an hour and 6 minutes long, but it was beautiful, and we shot in the winter. And it was just, we realized that we love shooting in the winter and also that we love horror. We got into some great film festivals and started getting really accepted by the horror crowd and the horror community. And we noticed that like they really pay attention to every detail that you put into the movie. And so we decided to make another horror movie, The Deeper You Dig, and this one Toby was on board with it, so automatically it was just, it had that extra flavor which Toby always brings, which is fantastic. And we made The Deeper You Dig, and that was really, really fun, and we learned some lessons when we went on the festival circuit again. And then we made Hellbender, which is our most recent film. And we've just found out that we love horror and the horror crowd so much. And just the genre allows you so much artistic freedom that maybe we didn't have as much of before when we were making dramas.
And I think that is well said. And I think that it's very similar to music in the sense that a lot of horror auteurs get started with this very DIY grassroots, the system's not letting us do what we want, so we're going to just do it ourselves and kind of make the system come to us. Like, that's, to me, that's punk rock, that's a lot of great metal bands, and that's, some of my favorite filmmakers, where it's just you, rather than what's the saying, it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission. Just going for it and letting the audience find you. I think it's so cool. Tell me a little bit about how you were able to make use of the pandemic, in the sense that, I mean, it was almost like a perfect storm for the kind of films that you're making, in that you already have this, fairly remote, isolated location that you can use. And I understand, one of the family members not being part of the pod. Already this is a character that's kind of isolated, so it sounds like it worked out just about as well as it could, in terms of when you think about all these huge productions, meanwhile, that every Marvel movie is getting shut down and whatnot. I would imagine for your family it was like, oh, we can do this is what we do anyway.
Yeah, you said it better than any of us honestly could have. Since we're just working with 3, sometimes 4 of us, it was kind of like the perfect time to thrive, to be honest. And we already work with common themes of like isolation. We live in a very isolated place, so it really matched what we were doing. Were you going to say something, Toby?
No, I knew you were going to say it better than I was going to say it, so you said it.
One advantage we had, though, is we traveled around and the world was shut down and at home. So we were in magnificently beautiful places, and we were the only ones there. We lived in a trailer, so we were in RV parks that had nobody. And it was exceptionally, I mean, it's not exceptional that COVID happened, but there was something eerily magical about our trip, because we were always alone in magnificent places that usually would be filled with people.
Yeah, I'm surprised that there wasn't more artists taking advantage of that. I have a friend, a musician friend, who right in the beginning of the lockdowns shot a music video in downtown Louisville, where he's just walking in the middle of the biggest streets, and it was like that scene in Vanilla Sky where Tom Cruise is in Times Square and it's empty. It's like that was everywhere, and I'm kind of surprised right now that we're not seeing more stuff coming out that took advantage of those naturally empty places. I mean,
that's what we definitely did, take advantage of it, because we went to places like Yellowstone, which normally is crowded as hell, but we went and there really were not, a lot of people, and we had to latch onto that advantage while we could.
Yeah, it's very cool, and probably everything was a lot cleaner.
Yeah.
lot of glass half full for as terrible as this whole situation has been. So I'm curious. I want to dig into the story of Hellbender a little bit, but in terms of, you know, sort of transitioning from these kind of psychological dramas into more horror oriented stuff, which I think it all kind of overlaps, you know. What were some reference points, you know, when you as a family are talking about horror films, you know, whether they're classics, whether it's contemporary, you know, when you have kind of the language, I guess, that you use with one another when you're like, let's make a movie that is a little bit of this and a little bit of this, but maybe takes this and makes it cooler. And, you know, what are some of the things that come up in conversation as far as movies and filmmakers?
That's a great question, because that's exactly what we do. And did you want to? We talk about each of us. I'll say me. I really wanted to capture. I've been the isolation of the thing and the paranoia. It's something that I've talked a lot about. These two definitely brought their.
Yeah, I mean, I love, even though we didn't want to flat out call Hellbenders witches, we definitely are fascinated by witchy things. You know, like anything from the movie The Witch to reading Macbeth. You know, I'm just love the witchy stuff. Every time my kids get sick, I'm like, I'm gonna cook you up a witch's brew. You know, it's all about the elements for me. And since we are back to the nature theme, that was extremely fun for us to play with that on a very crude level. Like, I like to think of it almost as a children's level. Like, how are spells? Like, I was doing some research on spells from the British Isles in the 1800s, and it was all stuff like kill a kid, meaning the goat, you know, and cut off a piece of its thigh and burn it under a full moon with 3 pieces of, you know, this of oat, and, you know, whatever, and it'll cure lameness. And it's like, oh, we got to make our spells have to make sense on a really rudimentary, crude level. And so for me, that kind of shit really inspired our thoughts.
Yeah, and when you think about even, you know, First Nations peoples and stuff that have lived with nature, you know, a lot of those things that we look at and it sounds crazy to us, you know, some of them work, you know, and work on a more simplistic level than more complex things that we've invented down the road. And that leads awesomely into my next question, which was in terms of the practical magic and the lore. I mean, one of the things that I would imagine is got to be a lot of fun about making movies like this one is doing your world building and figuring out even things that aren't on the screen or even necessarily on the page, but just conversations that you're having about, like, this is the universe that this story takes place in. What were some of those conversations like, and what did you look to sort of incite your ideas about the world these characters inhabit?
Back, not to beat a dead nature horse, but again, nature just always gives us clues. We knew that because these women lived in isolation, we did let nature give us the clues. So we were like, okay, if this mother is starving her daughter of her nature, which is very carnivorous, let's look to what's around pine cones, you know, raspberry thorns, mushrooms, which give off spores, which influenced our reasoning that they're self-reproducing, you know, like a mushroom or a fern. So yeah, again, that just influenced us greatly in building this world that is, and we wanted the Hellbender world to be reminiscent of the nature in that it's cyclical. It consumes itself just like the seasons consume themselves. Animals consume themselves and they die, and the earth swallows them up, and you know, a tree grows. We just couldn't get enough of that.
Yeah, I think some of those themes are really cool, and a lot of that, you know, death and renewal and rebirth, and you know, the seasons changing and all of that. Again, not to beat the dead horse on the pandemic, but it seems like that, you know, it's very prescient and timely to be thinking about those kind of themes when more of the world has been thinking about it than normal, I guess.
Hey, Ryan, let me add one more thing too. As far as the world building goes, the music played a really big part of that as well, because these people, this mother and daughter, that in a way that's their salvation of isolation, that they live in this mountaintop kind of rocking out into, you know, the ether, these two women. And to me, like, when they play their music, as we were performing it and shooting it, I felt like it was its own kind of spell casting. Like, it was this, even though it took place in a basement, there was this world that they're having. I could like envision the videos, you know, it was like those old MTV commercials that are psychedelic and everything. And then that played into the visions that they have too, the Hellbender visions in the book Revelations, when she finds the book, are very you know, kind of psychedelic rock, you know, out of the rock world.
Yeah, well said. And I think that certainly many, and I would be one of them, many people could make a persuasive argument that music is a kind of spell casting in certain situations, even the most rudimentary, even like, you know, the corniest, you know, club dance song is casting a certain type of spell, and it has a certain intention behind it that's, you know, possessing
Really
people.
yeah.
Well, not only that, but I mean, music does cast a spell. Imagine that I can listen to a song, I can listen to Gimme, Gimme, Gimme by Black Flag, and I can smell my room in 1980.
Yes.
I can feel it. I can
Yeah.
feel what the weather was like. And that's magic.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that can put me in that spot. You know, so music is just incredible in that way.
That's a great point. The way that music is so linked to our other senses in terms of memory. And yeah, I have the exact same experience. You hear a certain song, or see even a certain photo of a band, and you're transported, to a time and place.
It's incredible.
Or a relationship, or whatever it is that you associate with that. That's
In
so
fact,
cool.
Hellbender the movie was born from a video we did from Hellbender, our band. You know, we were doing a video for a song of ours called Black Sky, and it just took on this really witchy, dark kind of, you know, doomy feel, and we're like, oh,
let's make that movie.
Let's make that about an hour and 10
This
minutes.
video is
long.
very cinematic. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. That's great. And tell me about the because I've read quite a bit about the creative collaboration amongst all of you, and the shared duties with, you know, directing, writing, even when it comes to like choosing which take you want to use, and that sort of thing. The music side of it, what's everybody's role in that, and how does that connect with, I mean, obviously with Hellbender, and it's a very obvious visceral way of overlapping, but what relationship does filmmaking and music making have for all of you?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to answer for John, but he is a fantastic musician and really creates a lot of this music with his guitar, and then creates wonderful music like just through his computer. And every day he's pumping out like 5 songs, and he calls up Lulu, Toby, and I, and he's like, yo, like, what do you think of this song? And then Toby, Lulu, and me, we each sing on it. And that's kind of how the songs are born. Sometimes we'll write lyrics together that are really like poetic and witchy and cool. And a lot of times we're making music for the movie that we're working on. And we'll have a lot of conversations about how we want this music to sound. Do we want it to be more rocky, rough, fuzzy, or do we want it to be kind of alternative and soft? And we draw a lot of inspiration from our own personal artists that we really like. I love a lot of Courtney Barnett or like Billie Eilish, that kind of otherworldly feel.
Yeah.
And John loves like Black Flag and, you know, a lot of Circle Jerks, all these people. Toby loves Tom Waits. So we all kind of combine our likings into how we want the vibes of the song to feel and how they can assist the movie.
Yeah, I love all of the artists that you just mentioned from Everyone's Love. So Circle Jerk's currently on tour, by the way, which is insane.
I know. I'm on his Instagram, you know, Greg Hetson.
I was just about to say that's been my Instagram feed the last 2 days, is like everyone I know has been, was it either, I guess they played in Anaheim the other night, and they're
exactly.
Yeah, so it's like it's like watching your friend group as they travel through your feed.
So cool.
Yeah, super cool. And that's another thing, because I can remember my stepmom throwing my Circle Jerks t-shirt in the trash because of the band name. Yeah, and certainly you've raised your children in a much healthier, me as a Generation X kid who grew up in Indiana, and my parents were great and did their best, and they loved certain music and art, but it was definitely that era of satanic panic, and beware of what your kids are listening to, and what this Fangoria magazine's gonna destroy their lives. And kind of bringing our conversation full circle, I'm a big believer that this sort of stuff, these artistic outlets, they're preventing way more tragedies in our world than they're causing, because it's a place to park all that.
What we have noticed since we've been in the horror genre, how open-minded the horror crew is, how they love art. They are like they are a great crowd that the parents from the 80s, that's who they want their kids to be. Like, who cares if they got crazy earrings and spikes in their head? It doesn't matter, because what we have noticed is they have these wonderful hearts. They're like very wonderful human beings. And that doesn't mean they always love your movies. I'm not saying that, but they'll watch them and they'll talk about them, and they talk about political issues and emotional issues. And it's a really terrific group.
Yeah. And I feel like in that community that again, a parallel to the music community, I think one of the reasons why so many people like myself overlap in both is it's like a continuing conversation. Like, you're constantly engaged with the art. It's not like you watch Hellbender and then forget about it for the rest of your life. Like, if you find a movie that you really love, you're evangelizing to other people that they should see it, and you're going back and watching it, you're showing it to other people, you're reading behind the scenes stuff. It's much more of a conversation between art and audience, I think, in this genre than a lot of other film genres.
Another interesting thing that I notice is horror is still not accepted in like the general, like, it's still not quite accepted. Like, it's like this, like when we say we'll be places and what do you do? Oh, well, we make horror movies, and people are like, oh, okay, whatever, that's so dumb.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like punk rock. It's like back then it was like, what do you listen to? Oh, I like Bad Brains or whatever. And it's like, oh, that's terrible noise shit, you know? And it's like, it's funny that's why I think like a lot of punks and a lot of metalheads and like move into horror, because it's the visual aspect of that, but still the same social.
It's the same marginalized subculture where when you're in it, you understand how sophisticated it actually can be, but when you're outside of it, it just looks like nonsense.
Exactly. You put it perfectly.
Yeah. And I think one thing that's helpful, and it's great to see with your wonderful kids, both of you, that, people of our generation, as we're having children, I think is helping turn the tide a little bit too. I have two kids myself, and I remember when my daughter was in elementary school, her elementary school had a day that was Mohawk Day, and like the principal had like a faux hawk and like dyed it blue. Yeah. And I remember, this is going to sound name droppy, but I just remember the conversation. I was talking to Brett Gurewitz from Bad Religion that exact day, and we were doing a retrospective thing on an old Bad Religion record. And so I was telling him, I was like, how crazy is it that, I'm getting, suspended from school for wearing punk t-shirts and, reading about Bad Religion and fanzines. And now here I am, my kid is at elementary school. The principal has a mohawk today. It's Mohawk Day. And just, awesome. I feel like every little bit of that, helps the more that we all, infiltrate the world as we get older.
I am standing right behind you. I love that. We felt the same way. And we've noticed that too. It's great the way I think people are, you said it best. I won't put anything on top of it.
My best friend growing up, his parents were, I guess you could say, aging hippies, because this would be the 80s, right? But him and his sister called their parents John and Cindy. And, again, in Indiana in the early 80s, that was like so weird and crazy to everybody. And I thought it was so cool and interesting and thoughtful. And so brings me right back hearing you call your parents by their first names.
Yeah, exactly. People actually still freak out about that. When I call them John and Toby, all my friends are like, what's wrong? Like, why do you call them by their first names? I'm like, because that's their names. What do you mean? Like, we're
Yeah.
friends. Come on.
And I'm sure it's easy for you to be like, why does it seem like we're not close?
Yeah.
Because we're things turned out pretty okay.
I always
I've,
think
I've
it's so funny.
I've never really understood, often you hear people say, I am not my daughter's friend.
Yeah, that's
And
a
it's
good
like,
one.
well, that's too bad.
Yeah, sucks for all of you.
Like, believe me, they know your mom or dad. You
Yeah.
can be their friends. They're not going to forget it.
Also, artistically and musically, it's great to be friends with your kids because they bring so much new stuff to you, and they bring so much. Like Zelda and Lulu have brought obviously musical influences, but in the movie making front, Zelda has brought a lot of especially cinematic choices that never would have ever occurred to me, and she'll even back it up with, here, you need to watch this movie and see what they did, and I'll look, and it's always like, it's really cool. And even people hate TikTok or stuff like that, but the fact is like Zelda shows me some insane TikTok shit and Instagram films and all these things. So it's like, it is nice to see that young generation. They're cranking out mass amounts of art. And if you're
Yeah.
paying attention, it's phenomenal and original, and so much can be learned. And I love that about their generation.
Me too. And it's that thing where we have to check ourselves and make sure that we're not being our parents when we're dismissive of new platforms and yeah, I have to catch myself all the time.
Who is this Elvis the Pelvis?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Or this just sounds like a mix of this and this. I'm like, yeah, well, that's what they said about people in the know said about our bands back then too.
Exactly.
Oh, that's so cool. So this movie is actually, as we're speaking today, is going to be available via Shudder and for people to watch it in just a few days. I can only imagine, when you spend so much time making something and then you have post and you have film festival circuits and all of that. And again, not to make the one more music comparison, but like making a record, right? You go from initial ideas for the songs, to songwriting, to pre-production, to recording, to mixing and mastering, all that process. Obviously you've moved on creatively in the sense that you're knee deep in another up to your blood in a new project. How does it feel though to know that this thing Hellbender is going to be seen by a wider audience, and it's going to be a brand new movie to people here in a couple of days? Where does that sit with you?
It's incredible, to be honest. We kind of still can't believe it. Just the fact that Shudder picked us up is unbelievable, and so kind that they would do that for a family like us. And that's just why we love the horror crowd and Shudder and the community so much, because they will welcome us with open arms, and it just makes our hearts really happy. Yeah. What do you
Also,
guys?
we love the other movies on Shudder. Like we're big Shudder. Like we watch Shudder. So when Shudder wanted to pick us up, it was an immediate. It wasn't like, let's think about it. Like it was like, oh my God, that's exactly what we want, is to be with Shudder. So
Yeah.
it's really, really cool. We hope people have like as much fun looking at it as we did making it. That's kind of what our hope is,
I've been doing a little bit of capping my nights with what I call Shudder roulette, where there's just so much great stuff on there where I'm just like, like throwing a dart at. I have no idea what this is. I don't know who made it. I don't know what it's about. It's on Shudder. Give it a try.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. That's how Zelda and I discovered Raw. Well, not on Shudder, but we used to play when we were in New York City. We used to play art house theater roulette.
Oh,
We're
wow.
like, okay, whatever art house we're closest to, whatever's playing at 4:00, 10 minutes away, we're gonna go see it. And that's how we walked into Juliette DeCornell's Raw, and we were like,
Yep.
my God.
And it's so amazing that we saw it, because it actually gave us inspiration for one particular scene in Hellbender.
Amazing.
The finger scene.
Amazing. Yeah, and actually I've been doing it even with trying to fill out my film history education. I'll see other lists and I'll add them to my list, and a lot of times by the time I get around to watching something from my watch list, I don't remember why I put it on there. I don't really remember what it's about. And that's so fun because then you've got like what's, universally considered like a 5-star movie. You're going into it blind and, and then you just get to experience it. And then I'm usually reading about it and stuff after I've watched it. But that's been a lot of fun to do too. I just watched a movie the other night called Opening Night, which was a John Cassavetes movie that I knew nothing about. And, and it had won all these awards. And I never, the odds of me ever seeing that in my life were pretty slim. And then watching it and being like, oh, I'm so glad I watched this. This was amazing.
That's something that's so great about the film festival circuit as well, because you get to see movies that you never, ever would have seen before. And it's so fun. I've discovered one of my favorite horror, creepy, dirty movies ever, The Golden Glove. It's like, it's so nitty gritty and dirty. But I'm so happy I saw it. It's so messed up.
I gotta add that to my list.
Oh, you have to.
Oh, yeah.
Beware.
Remember, we didn't recommend it. Who the hell recommended this to me?
Well, don't worry, because by the time I get around to it, I'll have forgotten why I even had
Right.
it.
Just remember to take a shower right after you watch it.
That's that should be their pull quote on their DVD box.
And don't go eat like a piece of old ham.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, guys, this has been super fun. I will let you get back to your literal bloody mess on the floor. And looking forward to seeing that film. Are you able to reveal the title for that or any kind of details on the next one? Or
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil anything
Zelda,
prematurely, but
I love your rundown of it. Will you give them it?
Absolutely. So this movie is called When the Devil Roams. It takes place in the 1930s about a peculiar serial killing family on the carnival circuit. And something really bad happens to the parents, and the daughter, me, is left to pick up the pieces and sew together some of the pieces. So it's a good mix between Frankenstein and Bonnie and Clyde.
nice. When the Devil Roams, it's called.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yes.
have a great song called "When the Devil Come" that I should send to you guys.
Oh, please.
Ooh, yeah, that'd be great. We love new music, please.
Go
Or
right
old
in.
new music.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, all of you. So great speaking with you. I'm excited for people to get to experience this movie. Like I said, it checks a lot of boxes for me personally. So I was really stoked to talk to you about it. And can't wait to see how it's received by the rest of our community out there.
Thank you. We really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, thanks for having us. A really nice conversation. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, this was killer. This was really fun. And I look forward to talking to all of you again as you keep making these great
Yeah.
movies.
Absolutely. All right.
Thank you.
Peace.
Thanks.